Well, we will get started. So welcome to our Building Dementia Friendly Communities presentation. My name is Erica Zerzin, and I am the Public Awareness Coordinator here for the Alzheimer's Society of Saskatchewan. So I welcome you all to learn about dementia friendly communities. So please use the chat function or the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen for questions, and I will answer them at the end of the presentation. But if you would like to have more of an in-depth conversation about dementia-friendly communities or anything that we talk about today, please send me an email following the presentation, and I would be happy to set up a meeting or answer some more of your questions privately as well. But please try and keep your questions relevant to the presentation. If you have any personal or support questions, I do invite you to call our dementia helpline number. I will have it later in the presentation, but it is 1-877-949-4141, and that's available during our regular business hours, Monday to Friday. I will start with a land acknowledgement because the people of the Alzheimer's Society of Saskatchewan do believe that we are privileged to live and work across the traditionally sacred lands that we now know as Saskatchewan. We recognize the enduring presence of the Cree, Dakota, Dene, Nakota, Lakota, and Saulteaux people, as well as Métis people, who are the original stewards of the rolling hills, rushing rivers, and living skies that we all share today. As an organization, we do acknowledge the harms of the past and how Indigenous people are still impacted by the process of colonialism. Through partnerships, our land, our treaties, or through partnerships, education, and collective action, we commit to honoring our relationship to the land, our treaties, and towards each other as we journey towards Wokotahisuwin, which is reconciliation in Cree. So the purpose of this presentation today is to learn more about dementia, increase awareness of signs and risk factors of dementia, of course, understand what a dementia-friendly community is, and learn actions that you can take in your community that will make it more accessible and inclusive for people living with dementia and their care partners. So to begin, I want to tell you a little bit about the Alzheimer's Society as well as where dementia is in Saskatchewan, because the Alzheimer's Society offers help for today through our programs and services for people living with dementia, and hope for tomorrow by funding research to find a cure and improve care across the province. We have trained programs and services staff that provide information, support, and education throughout the province. On the map here, you can see kind of the total clients by community. So the areas with the larger red circles are where our main office hubs are, or our first link coordinators are for support. So we try to reach as much as the province as possible. And actually in the last fiscal year, we served 3,300 clients from 360 different communities. So every year that number continues to grow, with it estimating about 20,000 people currently living in Saskatchewan with dementia. And that number is projected to increase by the Alzheimer's Society of Canada's landmark study that was recently released. That is supposed to more than double in the next 30 years. So with that number growing, and as you can see on the slide, 3 out of 4 Canadians know someone living with dementia, but only 1 out of 4 report knowing that they can name at least 3 of the signs of dementia. So people recognize dementia as something that happens to people they know, but are they really recognizing dementia? So hopefully today we can kind of clarify some of that for you so you can better recognize dementia and better support people living in your communities or in your workplaces or your families that are experiencing dementia. Because we do know that this is a compelling health issue, that many people are not aware of the full spectrum of what dementia actually is. So all of this is important to us because 60% of people living with dementia actually are living in their communities, in their homes, and not in long-term care. So with support, we can help the people maintain a good quality of life and live well longer in their communities. So by creating dementia-friendly communities, people living with dementia can feel more included, valued, and supported. This can help improve their overall quality of life and their well-being by at the same time reducing the stigma, increasing our empathy, and supporting those affected by the condition. So we are really working to improve access to services and education for people living with dementia, their families, and their communities. So I briefly mentioned that dementia is projected to more than double in the next 30 years. So in that same time frame, the cost of dementia in Saskatchewan is expected to be over 3.35.9 billion in health costs, unpaid caregiver costs, and indirect costs. Because that many people are experiencing dementia, 20,000 say in Saskatchewan, that means that there is going to be almost 25,000 care partners in the province as well, which will be about 29 million hours of unpaid care. So, we see an increase of people living with dementia. We also have to see an increase in people supporting those people living with dementia, because it does take a community to support someone living with dementia. So when we look at kind of the impact on care partners, it is research estimated that nearly 50% of these care partners for people living with dementia will experience symptoms of distress themselves. And this is actually twice the rate of care partners to older adults with health conditions other than dementia. So it is impactful on the people around the person with dementia as well, and the community that they're in. So I hope this does paint a picture of that impact, because it does expand just past the person living with dementia all the way up to the economy. So that being said, people living with dementia often face stigma, and stigma is the biggest barrier that is reported. People report facing stigmatization and discrimination in their communities, which can in turn lead to feelings and experiences of isolation and exclusion, which we want to change that and make people feel more included. But this stigma is due to a misunderstanding and really a lack of awareness around dementia. So this grows the stigma and the misconceptions about dementia by not fully understanding it, what it looks like, or how it is managed in a community setting. And that's also this misinformation reduces the ability for individuals to access an early diagnosis. So our goal is to raise awareness about all of the changes that dementia can cause so that we can reduce stigma that is too often associated with dementia and better promote understanding about what someone with dementia might experience and empower people to get an earlier diagnosis. So today I will explain all of that to you, how to maybe spot someone's experiencing dementia and how to react to that to better support them as well. Because the stigma, it can lead to rates of social isolation due to feeling uncomfortable in public, unwelcome, unsure, and that can increase the anxiety for the person living with dementia and their care partner when they are already under a lot of stress. So although any chronic disease can increase the likelihood of social isolation and anxiety, the negative public perception of dementia really amplifies this experience, unfortunately. And I know we all hear about social isolation and the risks. I know we all probably remember the recent COVID epidemic, but recent studies by the US Center for Disease Control have actually found that social isolation can significantly increase a person's risk of premature death from all causes. So that is actually a risk that rivals those of smoking, obesity, and physical inactivity. poor socialization, poor social relationships, so such as feeling lonely, is actually even associated with a 29% increased risk of heart disease and a 32% increased risk of stroke. Loneliness has also been associated with high rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide, unfortunately. So remember that stigma leading to isolation and exclusion does not only hurt people living with dementia, but it also discourages families from confiding in others and getting the support that they really need. So that being said, I want to cover what dementia actually is so that we can start to work to beat those misconceptions. So as you can see on the slide, we have an umbrella because we like to refer to dementia as an umbrella term where it refers to a set of symptoms, but it's not actually a disease itself. So many different diseases can cause and lead to dementia symptoms, but dementia is not a disease itself. So Alzheimer's disease causes and leads to dementia. And these symptoms, they're grouped under the umbrella because they are very similar. They usually include memory loss, difficulties with problem solving, and even changes in mood and behavior. And dementia is identified when these symptoms or behaviors are severe enough to interfere with a person's daily life and activities. So this slide only shows a few examples. Like I said, there are a lot of things that can lead to dementia symptoms, but they all usually are neurodegenerative progressive conditions that will affect the physical structure of the brain, causing dementia. The examples listed on these slides, again, are not exhaustive. So if you have any questions about any types of these, I do encourage you to reach out to us to explain them a little bit better. But recognizing that they are all all different diseases that cause similar symptoms because they are impacting what is going on in our brains. And this slide shows that a little bit. This is one of my favorite diagrams personally because I love the brain, but different dementias will affect the brain differently depending on what area they are in. So you might have seen on the other slide the frontotemporal dementia. That one usually affects the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain. Alzheimer's disease is believed to start more in the hippocampus, which is not seen on this slide, but it is in the more middle of the brain. And they all have different functions. So you'll see with frontotemporal dementia, you may have more problems with behavioral control, language, and understanding things, where with Alzheimer's disease, short-term memory usually comes up first. So depending if you get an early diagnosis because you start to see these changes in yourself or others, you can understand what type of dementia you may be getting, or what type of disease you may be getting to get dementia, and being able to expect what will happen with that. So what causes dementia? We do know that dementia is not a normal part of aging, but unfortunately there is currently no cure for dementia. So it is progressive, it's not reversible, so it will get worse over time. It usually happens in stages that are very similar to each other. But there are medications and lifestyle changes that you can make to help reduce your risk and manage the symptoms, but they don't work forever and they won't work for everyone, unfortunately. But it does increase, your risk of dementia does increase as we age, but don't assume that age is the only risk factor for dementia, because there are quite a few. 40% of them are related to our brain health and kind of our lifestyle habits. But it can happen younger depending on your health conditions, any injuries, or your lifestyle habits. So you can start to see dementia symptoms in your 30s and 40s, but obviously those ones are a lot harder to notice in people. But there are a number of factors that can affect the risk of developing dementia, but risk factors are not causes of a disease, but are characteristics of where we live, our genetics, and our lifestyle that help increase the likelihood of getting a disease, unfortunately. And there are modifiable ones, which are ones we can change, such as our lifestyle habits. And then there are non-modifiable ones, such as our age, genetics, gender, and medical conditions. So what are the signs of dementia? There are actually 10 evidence-based signs of dementia. I won't go through all of them today, but I do my best to give you a brief overview. The best way that we like to say to remember these are the ABCs of dementia. So the changes in abilities, behaviors, and communication. It is important to remember that everyone who experiences dementia will not always experience all these symptoms or experiencing them in the same way. So it is really dependent on someone's brain and what's normal and what's not normal for them, what area of the brain that it's in, and of course, how fast it is progressing. Some of the most common ones obviously are the memory changes. This can look like people forgetting things more often, maybe doing the same thing repeatedly for a while, asking the same questions, missing appointments, having a hard time remembering names of people you knew, but if you were always bad at remembering names, that's not a sign for you. It is something that is changing in your life. You're changing the way that you do things that you maybe don't have any control over or no thought about. And this can also look like forgetting to take medications, which can lead to other issues as well. Difficulty performing familiar tasks. So this can include having trouble driving a car or cooking a regular meal that someone would make. It can also show up as challenges with daily routines, such as getting ready in the morning, eating that kind of morning routine, and vice versa throughout the day. Just which you can see, some of these can be a safety risk. So if someone is having trouble driving a car, that could be a safety risk. So there are things that you want to know. Same with disorientation in time and place. This can look like being late, missing appointments, showing up at the wrong time or day, but this can also look like someone doing something for a long time or getting lost. Wandering is another thing, and confused about where they are. I will explain wandering a little bit better later so that you can have maybe an action plan around that if it is something that you notice or someone that you see out just in the day. Impaired judgment is another one I like to note because this can lead people to unfortunately be more at risk to be victims of scams and financial abuse. It can also look like some medical dangers, such as leaving a wound untreated or not knowing, maybe having and lasting infections that people don't notice, or not dressing appropriately for the weather, which can, if it's cold or if it's too hot, can lead to some issues as well. Changes in sight or motion is another one because dementia can affect our vision and our depth perception as well as our movement. So this may look like someone dropping things a lot, putting things down on tables, tripping and falling more. And again, if we think about driving a vehicle, someone with changes in sight and depth perception may be at risk of harming others or themselves when driving. So if you notice little changes with someone's sight or how they are moving, you may want to get that assessed as well as kind of be there for support. Make sure you're getting your eyes checked regularly too. That is very important. Because again, if we think back to that brain and all the pathways, they get worn out, your brain's experiencing that loss of function, unfortunately. So you can hopefully start to notice these things in other people or yourself. If you start to notice these changes, be something that you want to note and have supports in place. The last one that I like to note are changes in language and communication. I will talk more in depthly about communication shortly, But this can look like having the inability to find the right words, or repeating words or questions. And now, as we see with a change in our demographics, we also notice people reverting back to first languages. Maybe English isn't their first language. So as short-term memory goes, English is going to be forgotten before a language that they spoke when they were younger, obviously. So if you start to see these, I would recommend, reaching out to us, talking to your doctor, and these things so that you can get an early diagnosis or get support or find out why these things are happening. Sometimes if you're missing medications or if you're taking too many medications, they can interact, as well as, leaving those infections left untreated, such as urinary tract infections are a big one, and even vitamin deficiencies. So there can be lots of things going on in our bodies that can impact our brain function that if we leave them long enough will impact our brain function. So I hope that makes some sense, explaining these. If you have any further questions, please ask, please let me know. And I do want to note the problems with abstract thinking, because that is a big factor in dementia-friendly communities. Symbols start to lose meaning. Maybe, people lose meaning of words. People can also lose meaning of symptoms. So if designs aren't clear and to the point with, I'll show you some examples shortly, but people start to abstract things. So people start to lose meaning of those. But if you do see these things, reach out to us. We can help you make a plan in a more personal way. But going forward, I'll kind of tell you more about how it is impacted in the community, and what you can do about that to help support. The changes to interpersonal and interpersonal life is something I also like to note, because you do see a change in family structures and roles. Maybe some people are giving up controls that they are always used to having, and some people are stepping into more leadership roles in families. People are dynamics, relationship changes, right? So your roles and responsibilities in the community can also change. Can you handle doing all those volunteers or at your job? What does work accommodations look like? How do you stay active in your community, but with the lesser type of role? Like, how do you have that conversation with someone, right? Changes in romantic relationships as well, we see, and as with friendships. And also someone's understanding of themselves changes. And I know that this is, when you're going through dementia, something hard on the person experiencing it, but it is also hard on the family who is around it. So, we always want to say to lead with compassion when you're dealing with these situations. So always keep that in mind, because you never really know what someone's going through, right? Back to our 40% of dementias being preventable by our lifestyle habits. This wonderful head here shows a nice graphic of modifiable risk factors. So it's things that we can think about through our whole life, that are choices that we can make, that impact our health. And it is important to understand that each of these factors alone do not guarantee someone will develop dementia, and having little or no exposure to these risk factors also doesn't mean that you won't get dementia. I know that isn't very reassuring, but that is the information that we have based on the research that we currently have. So, like I mentioned, non-modifiable risk factors include our age, our genetics, and our sex at birth. And modifiable risk factors include nutrition, exercise habits, how much we're sleeping, substance use, are we being socially engaged, what's our education level, are we continuing to learn throughout life, are we getting our vision and our hearing checked, what are our hormone levels and our cholesterol levels and our vitamin levels at. So all of those things really do impact our brain and should be noted and monitored throughout life so that we can live well longer, really. So I do encourage you all we do have a presentation actually that focuses solely on the risk factors for dementia and how to reduce your risk. I do believe the next one is in November. If you want to learn more about the signs of dementia, which I guess I should have noted already, that will be next month as well. So we do hold regular education sessions specifically on these topics. If you do want more information. And following the presentation, I will send out some resources that have, similar information in them as well. So what are dementia-friendly communities? So dementia-friendly communities are places where people with dementia and their care partners are supported to live well by feeling included, welcomed, and understood in the activities that they're participating in outside of their homes. A dementia-friendly community also focuses on reducing stigma so that people living with dementia, again, feel supported to participate and contribute still in meaningful ways. We like to say, focus on someone's abilities still, and our role as a society is creating and fostering a community of support in the management of dementia for those people who are experiencing the disease so that they can still meaningfully contribute and participate in their communities. And this is really important in Saskatchewan, especially to support people, promote inclusion and understanding. We are very rural communities here. People often already feel isolated, so we like to focus on how can we make those people feel better? How can we bring communities together so that people feel like they still belong? Because like I mentioned, social health is actually very important to our health. Having people that you can trust and do things with in that support system. So we need to work together to create dementia-friendly communities. It's not something that we can just tell you what to do. It is different for everyone based on their needs and the people that they have in their community. But we do hope today that I can give you some ideas of maybe get you thinking about what that could look like for you and your community or organization or even your family. So our goal is to really just build a more compassionate and supportive society. So this poster that you see on here, it is also behind me, which is a fun fact, but this is something we created from a project. It was the Dementia Supports in Rural Saskatchewan project. We connected with individuals, communities, and organizations throughout the Yorkton and Melville kind of rural area over the past few years. And this is kind of a process map for dementia-friendly communities. The goal is, raising awareness by, being here today, you're becoming more aware of dementia-friendly communities, how, understanding dementia, how it's experienced, how it can be managed. So thank you for being here to learn more about that. Next step would be engagement. So what actions are going to happen next? Often small, simple changes are the ones that make the biggest difference in communities. So you may think you need to build a whole new building with signage and have greeters and arrows on the floor that tell you everywhere to go, but you don't. It just takes that one person or maybe that one sign, to get things. You don't have to go change and paint everything, but it's small changes and being more personable that really does make a difference in people's experiences in the communities and everywhere that they go. So next is collaboration. So successful community collaboration is what creates a journey for the organization or the community to become more dementia friendly. This is going to look different for everybody, like I mentioned, based on needs. So our role in that is to provide as much information as possible through support and resources to assist people and organizations in their dementia-friendly initiatives. We have a checklist, but I mean, it's not always just a checklist. It's what can you do, what needs to be do, and what do people need, like what do other people need? So it's an ongoing process. It's not a checklist that you can check things off and be done. It's ongoing education, it's sustainability, it's knowledge transfer. And most importantly, it is community agency. So that is a continued engagement for dementia-friendly communities. What actions are people taking on their own in their communities? How are they involving other people? You know, are they being advocates? How do you have a sustainability plan? You know, these things are all, dementia is not something that's stopping, unfortunately. So how do we support people for the coming year, 30, 50 years? You know, what legacy do we leave to support that? So first I will kind of hint at things that you can do, but I will start with kind of explaining now dementia-friendly environments, because really dementia-friendly communities are accessible communities. They're safe and they're inclusive and welcoming for people living with dementia and their care partners. And it's somewhere that promotes comfort and independence. So this includes experiences of social and physical aspects of a community, but changes made to the physical environment that make the space more accessible to those with physical disabilities is dementia friendly. However, in order to make a space accessible as possible for people with dementia, special considerations need to be given on how dementia can affect someone's mobility, balance, you know, depth perception, auditory and visual processing. So first, some simple changes. Like we said, we want to keep it simple, and you don't have to worry about writing all these down. This is recorded, and I will send you out some reading material after that has these in them. But first of all, you can, as you can see, clearly labeling things. So you can install signage. We've done it in our office here in Regina, and we are under the way of doing it in Saskatoon as well, which is very exciting. But and this allows it to be more helpful for people who are living with dementia and want that independence to understand where they can go or where they need to go. As well as if you think about when you've been somewhere that you've never been before, if there's no labels, if there's no instructions, a lot of the time that can be confusing for anybody. So when someone is experiencing dementia, it's just that much more confusing because they don't know who to ask, they don't know where to go, and if you have increasing confusion leads to anxiety, it can lead to a spiral, unfortunately. So having these things can help increase independence or even pointing where to go to get help is important. So small changes such as signs to important places is a good idea. You also want to think about the lighting throughout your space. Is it welcoming? Is it easy to see around? Is it too bright? Is it make people's eyes sore? Or is it too dark? Or is there some light bulbs burnt out? Those kind of things. So you want to have everything very easy to read and accessible and easy to see. That being said, something to avoid would be black floor mats. A lot of the times when our depth perception changes, these black floor mats could be seen as holes. And people can think that they're going to trip or increase their risk of tripping, as well as clutter that is left around. So yes, it's nice to have a lot of lighting, but is there a clear walking path? Is there tripping hazards? Things like that are important to note as well. An accessible washroom is always a good idea because a lot of people living with dementia in certain stages need support to go to washrooms. And you can think about how many other people with different life situations that need that as well. So, you know, having a private washroom that allows more than one person to get in and make sure that there's a wheelchair that has a clear path. You know, I've seen places with wheelchair accessible bathrooms, but then they couldn't actually fit through the bathroom door to get into the accessible bathroom. So there's all things you want to note. If you walk through your space and you try and look at it through a different lens, how would someone with, you know, vision issues see this? Or how would someone that's never been here before see this if you take a step back and really look at your areas? That can be very helpful. So, you know, having these signs, having lighting, simple things like that. you can go deeper and talk about patterns on floors and having landmarks and all of that as well. And I can send you out more information on that, or if you'd like to have a conversation, I am also available. If you want the checklist, we have that as well. So next I want to discuss communication changes, because this is really the one that is going to be the most easy for you to manage. I guess I don't want to say easy, but you won't really have to invest any time more than here unless you really want to, or changes in your physical space. So this is something you can do internally, because dementia can affect how people express themselves and how they understand what's being communicated to them. So, maintaining relationships can become a complex process, especially when verbal communication is affected. So an important part of dementia-friendly communities is how the social environment is experienced. How are people talking to them? So I will explain that first, because again, you can see on the slide, we talked about abstract thinking, and on the slide it says avoid using slang and metaphors that could be interpreted if taken literally. That is abstract thinking and having to understand metaphors. So if it's raining cats and dogs, the best thing to do is to agree with them, and so that you don't stress them out more, confuse them, and it's better to meet them where they're at. So, if someone has difficulty finding a word, maybe ask them to draw it or try and find it out another way. People may create new words for words that are forgotten. They may also repeat themselves a lot. So if you find someone is repeating themselves, be kind. They don't know that they said it again, you do, and they're not going to meet you where you're at. We encourage you to try and meet them where they are at. You can also see people have a change in the way that they communicate. So we talked about going back to a first language. You can also see people starting to use language that they maybe never used before, talking in a way that they never did before, which can be even offensive sometimes. So if you start to note those changes, try not to take them personally, and try to just meet them where they're at. And remember to have compassion. Another thing you can remember is to remember to make eye contact with someone, talk slower, probably slower than I talk today, and also ask one question at a time, and choosing close-ended questions. So, instead of asking, do you want a drink? Say, do you want a coffee? Do you want a juice? Would you like some water? So being more specific and intentional with your questions rather than what do you want or what do you want to do today? Because it relates a lot more thinking time, but also give people patience and time to answer. You don't have to speak more slowly that they can't hear you, or more loudly. Adjust to the person that you're there with. If they look confused, maybe try saying it another way, or try writing it down, things like that. So this photo explains, people recalling things that aren't happening, or being a little bit confused about situations. All right, and one of the things, oh, sorry, I don't have enough coffee today. One of the things that we like to remember is connecting, not correcting. So kind of what I've been explaining, to meet people where they're at, because you can just enhance their confusion, and increase your frustration as well. So you want to just be compassionate. If someone doesn't understand, do not take it personally. It's not your fault, and it's not their fault. So back to workspaces, though, you can also consider wearing a name tag if you don't already, having one that's easy to read, not too shiny, nice contrasting colors on them, and also welcoming people when they come into maybe your workplace, or if you see someone walking around your neighborhood that looks a little bit confused, don't be scared to go up to someone and ask them if they're okay or anything like that. Do they need help? and can make a huge difference in someone's life, or welcoming them. Hello, how are you today? Is there anything I can help you find? Have that patience and have that personability that really makes a big difference, especially with people with dementia. And the biggest thing we talked about today is inclusion. As well. So meaningful engagement is a person-centered approach that will really encourage and invite people with dementia to purposely participate in activities of organizations and communities. People want to still participate. People need to still participate in communities and in events. So, this can include contributing ideas. What skills do they have? Focus on their abilities. Dementia, a lot of people focus on the loss. You're losing this. You're losing your mind is something people obviously say, but that's not always true. That's not true. People may be losing things, but they still have abilities. They're still people, and they still want to participate. So that losing your mind is a huge stigma around dementia that we really would like to try and combat today. That's why I say it in parentheses. But because people are still able, people still have conscious thoughts, they still have interests, and they may just need a little bit of encouragement to do those, and we should be doing that. Individual participation, group discussions, how can you accommodate so that people can still feel included? What are their personal histories, and what do you know that they like to do? This gives people so much more autonomy and belonging in life. They get to be listened to. They get a sense of purpose and routine. You like to have everyone does better when we have a bit of a routine. Offer appropriate outlets, for empowerment and having experiences. This can help people increase their self-esteem and the sense of accomplishment. And then, a better understanding for them and for their families. It eases that stress when we feel like we belong and that we're doing things. It allows people to address issues related to living with dementia. So how does someone see the space, that you're working in, or that you're living in, or your community? Is it walkable? Do you have cracks in the sidewalks? When we walked through the office, for example, to put up our signage, when we had people living with dementia walk through, they told us, well, this area needs a sign because there's something missing. So, at any directional point, what's the decision that you have to make, and how do you help people make that decision? And that goes with being included in things as well. People still want to give their perspectives and feel useful. And that's what meaningful engagement is all about. So how do you meaningfully engage? You bring a welcoming, encouraging attitude, being supportive, compassionate. You should understand the effects of dementia and how that person may be experiencing them, and know why that those things are happening to someone, because of what is going on in their brains. Encourage people with dementia to still speak for themselves. Don't automatically go to their care partner if you see them. Ask them a question, allow them to speak, include them that way. If you want to still include them in engagement and dialogue. It also allows people to have a safe environment so that they can express and have their opinions without fear of being judged or dismissed. It's also an opportunity for people to influence what happens and make decisions that matter. We all want to make decisions for ourselves. As well as an opportunity to recognize skills and abilities of each person, have meaningful and useful participation, and of course, being listened to is very important. We all like to be listened to. We all like to feel needed and part of something. So don't forget that for people living with dementia, please. Next is disorientation and getting lost. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I want to highlight wandering because it is estimated that 4 out of 10 people living with dementia will go missing at some point. And this can happen at any stage of the disease. It can happen right at the beginning and be the first sign, or be very unexpected, or it can be something that you're kind of expecting that happens later. And really why this happens is because of the physical changes in the brain They become disorientated, even in familiar places. People can get confused about certain doors in their homes. So if you are living with someone with dementia, you may even want to consider putting up labels in your homes. Here's the toilets. This is what's in this drawer. Here's the towels. This is soap. This is toothpaste, that type of stuff. It may help with them being confused, with them avoiding getting more confused. But the term wandering, it is a bit of an inaccurate term because the person may appear quite purposeful. They may look like they know where they're going. They're on a mission in that direction, but they may be going somewhere specific. That is true, but it may not exist anymore. It may not be safe to walk to. It may be very far. And so that can propose a lot of safety risks because someone could be walking for a very long time. Someone could walk into somewhere and get hurt, or the possibilities are unfortunately endless. So if you find someone and they don't look like they should be walking across the country and that's what they tell you they're doing, we would encourage you, the best thing you can do is to call 911. If you notice someone wandering, it is an emergency, it is dangerous. So how do we support that? If that is in your workplace, it is good to have an action plan, understand who to call, what to do. This can also happen in new environments. If someone's never been somewhere before, it can increase our anxiety, and increase, if you move or they're in a new neighborhood, or a new building, it can increase the risk of wandering because they want to go home. So they don't recognize that this is home now because in their brain still the other place was home. But it's not a harmful behavior. People want to get out, live their lives still. But in the way that they're doing it in the state that they're in is what makes it dangerous, because you can lose track of time. You don't know how long you've been doing it for. You don't know how long you've been walking or where you are. So the short-term memory loss, and the impaired ability to make, sound judgments can contribute to the wandering behavior. So you also get the dangers of traffic, falling, and weather conditions, especially in Saskatchewan. The weather here, it gets very dangerous. So, if this is something that you see or you're experiencing, give us a call for help with dealing with that situation. But if it's happening in the moment, please call 911. If you do notice this happening with someone, say in your family, for example, there are multiple plans that you can take. A lot of people are using AirTags and GPS devices now, having identification cards. We have cards as well that says, I'm living with dementia, or I'm caring for someone with dementia, please be patient. So there are a lot of tools and resources. We have a program too, even if you're traveling, if you're flying. There is the lanyard program at the airports as well. So if you want more information on that, please let us know. Next, I do want to highlight an online learning opportunity that kind of goes above, or kind of goes past this. It was Dementia Friendly Canada. So it is a project that was a partnership with Alzheimer's societies across the country. I say was because unfortunately we just ended it here this summer. We do still have more resources coming out, but as of right now, the project is at a standstill. We built these online courses, building dementia-friendly communities. They're kind of a fun click-through course. If you have the time, there's 4 different streams, targeted at, right now there's 4, there are more coming out, I guess there's gonna be 6. So it'll be recreation, library, restaurant, retail businesses, public transportation, as well as financial and general public. So we are excited for all of those to launch. We will let you know when that happens, but I invite you to take a look if you want some further education. I will also send them in an email. It's about a 75-minute time commitment as of now, but it's easy at your pace, at your own pace, self-learning kind of activity. But if you want to talk more about it, again, I'm here to answer all your questions. This project and the content is near dear in my heart because I was part of it. So It's always nice to get it out and share. The screen, I should note, the picture on the screen is what the course will look like online. It kind of goes through a town. It's really cute if you have the interest in that. And what else? So how can you be dementia friendly right now? How can you be, you or your organization? So, to kind of sum everything up, be mindful to recognize people's individuality and identity still. Be flexible, understanding, and accommodating. Recognize that communication is still possible, may just look a little different, sound a little different. Be understanding. And to gain personal knowledge, do the online courses. We appreciate you being here. If maybe you request more materials, read over the material I said. There's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of knowledge. Do what you feel you may need or what is appropriate for you in your community. We can't force you to do anything. I can give you recommendations. There's a lot of information out there, so it really just depends on how deep you want to go. You can also think about policies that you can adopt for your employees in your organizations. How does it support diversity, equity, and inclusion? Are there workplace accommodations, health and safety, and different type of employee absences? Are there quiet areas, things like that? Maybe you want to have a dementia champion in your organization or your community, someone that attends these, does the research and the knowledge, and passes it back to the community, makes action changes. You may want to have a brainstorming session that you brainstorm with your community or your colleagues about simple changes that you can make in the workplace. You can think about and discuss how you are going to challenge your beliefs, the myths, and the stigma around dementia in your community or your organization. You can also encourage or force employees and volunteers to have training to quickly identify if someone may be having dementia, maybe experiencing dementia, or maybe if someone's a victim of a scam, if someone's at danger to themselves, those type of things. And of course, please stay in contact with us if you have any follow-up questions, or if you want more information or resources for your staff or your community, your colleagues. And here is the number that I promised. So our dementia helpline number. We are really trying to just build a community of support here, that we have so much information, bringing people with different experiences and different services together to really make our communities a better place. We want to create connections so that we can provide more services for people to turn to when they need them. And when you do connect with the Alzheimer's Society, you get a personalized information and support. So whether you want to talk to me about changes you can make in your community, or maybe reducing your risks of dementia, or you want to talk to one of our first link coordinators, about changes you're seeing in family members, changes that you're seeing in yourself. How do I get a diagnosis? How do I manage these behaviors? That would be with one of our first link coordinators. And, and then we also have support groups in many areas across Saskatchewan. Do you have a support group in your town and in your city? Do you need one? Do you want one? There is a lot of options on things that you can do to better support people living with dementia, and we would love to support you in supporting that. So if there is something that you have any questions or want more information about, you can call the dementia helpline there. It's 1-877-949-4141. It's absolutely free to contact us. And you don't need a diagnosis. Even if you just have a question about dementia, you can call or you can email. The number is available Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. But you can send an email 24 hours a day. You just probably won't get a response right away. And you all should already have my information because I've sent this out, but here it is again. If you have any further questions or you want to call me, here is my information. And we do have a lot more of learning opportunities and education online. So I do invite you to connect with us over one of our many social channels. We also have a really nice reservoir of information on YouTube. So I hope that was interesting to everyone. I really thank you for coming and learning more about this today. If you want any more specialized knowledge, please let me know. If you have any questions, I would love to answer them now.